Thank you. Item 1, call to order. I now call to order, which I just did, the regular meeting of the Executive Committee. Roll call. Martina, will you please call the roll to ensure that we have a quorum?
Certainly, starting with Director Goins,
Here.
Director Rodoni,
Here.
Director McMillan.
Here for Barbara Kohler.
Thank you, and Director Hilliard.
Here.
We do have a quorum and may proceed with the meeting.
Thank you. Agenda adjustments. I'll entertain requests to adjust the order of the agenda if there are any. Hearing none, we'll go on to item 4, open time for public expression. The public is welcome to address the Executive Committee at this time on matters not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of the committee. Please be advised that pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2, the committee is not permitted to discuss or take action on any matter not on the agenda. Comments may be no longer than 2 minutes and should be respectful to the community. Please silence your cell phones during the meeting. Mute your microphone when not reporting out. Thank you. Are there any members of the public online? I see no one present.
There are no hands at this time.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move to item 5, Executive Officer's Report. This is an oral report. Executive Officer Mark Brown will present the Executive Officer's report. Mark.
Good morning, everybody. Happy April, not April Fools. By the way, although April Fools, we do consider that our official birthday. So happy birthday yesterday for Marin Wildfire being 6 years old. And I hope you all had a chance to watch TV and watch the Artemis 2 rocket launch.
Yeah.
And exciting times to be sending people back to the moon, although we were having a conversation. Some people don't know if the first launch really occurred, but sorry, I had to go there. Speaking of the last couple of days, we have had measurable rain. And what I'm really going to be curious to watch is how it affected, or whether or not it'll affect the grass crop. I'd been noticing that a lot of the grass crop had already started to turn and go brown. And so if we get rain after that, it won't necessarily generate more grass growth and won't have much change to the grass crop itself. So it'll be interesting to see how that rain impacts the 1 hour fuels, 10-hour fuels. The 100 and 1,000-hour fuels are now projected to go up to average, but that will only bring us up to average. We're way below average for 100 and 1,000-hour fuels right now. So we'll see what the long-term outlook looks like for those fuels. I really hope we could continue to get rain, not so much for the light fuels, but continue to get moisture into the heavier fuels. If you noticed in the IGA yesterday, we had a Marin Voice article about the CWPP and the upcoming event, authored by myself and Board President Hilliard, getting a lot of great feedback from that. I'd been mentioning to you that the Resources Legacy Fund was coming to visit last week. It was a great day in Sleepy Hollow. We were able to visit 2 sites. One site was part of the Greater Ross Valley Shaded Fuel Break. Another site was a resident's property with the permission of the resident, who has been doing great Zone 0 work, so we can discuss our systems approach that we take here at Marin Wildfire. Picture here on the slide is the end of the day. After our event, they were heading over to Sky Oaks to spend some time with Marin Water to take a look at the restoration projects that Marin Water is doing. I think it's indicative of the great work that's happening in Marin, that when Resources Legacy Fund asks us to come here for their board of directors meeting. And just a reminder, we are going to be reaching out to you again to try to find an appropriate Saturday for our strategic planning for the board of directors. We just couldn't get enough of the board members to come between now and when we were talking about, and we felt it was better to push pause a little bit and get the right people rather than try to rush the process. CWPP is going well. We just closed final comments for our stakeholders committee. We're cleaning up the cleaning up the document based on the comments that we received. And I hope that you've all at least gotten some type of notification. I know I sent it to the entire board and others about the May 2nd event of the community outreach, where we will have tabling events based on the categories of risk that we're prioritizing in the CWPP. We'll also be tabling by zone. Then we will have a presentation, then a panel discussion, and then more interaction at the table. So it should be a really interactive event. We tried to make it less talking to people, talking at people, and more being able to talk with people. And it's also, it helps that it aligns with wildfire preparedness. And as always, for the exec committee following President Hilliard's request, Ann's notorious, infamous, or what other words do we want to use for your slide, that we show at every ATC meeting, thorough. We show it at every ATC meeting, every ops committee meeting. And Catherine asked that we show the exec at the board to just help keep everybody on track of where we are in the process. So here we are, April 2nd. We're going to have another ATC meeting. And as a reminder, and as you saw on the agenda, we'll discuss JPA-wide projects today and at the board. It's discuss, it's not approve. And this was a request from the board because when we come in May with all the JPA-wide and all the zone projects, that's a lot to digest. So we broke it in half. Digest the JPA-wide in April, digest and approve the entire package in zone, or in May, excuse me. And then last week, we had the tremendous honor of receiving the Wildfire Mitigation Award in Reno. Here is Catherine and I on the stage receiving it. It's so see-through that you probably can't tell. I'm actually holding it on the stage. And then the picture has all of my grubby fingerprints on it. So we do have it here, and we'll find the appropriate place within Marin Wildfire's offices to store that, and we are working on a media release. Display is the word I meant to say. We'll find our appropriate place to display that, and we'll make sure that we clean any more of the fingerprints that are on it off. But it was a great event to be at the WUI event. When I was walking around with a Marin Wildfire shirt on, I didn't have my name tag on yet, people would see the logo and actually track me down. That's the name recognition that Marin Wildfire now has. And the next, and of course, there's a lot of great education that happens at conferences, but one of the number one things we get is the networking. And so I think one of the key networking connections I was able to personally make was talking to one of the reps from CSAA, who knows about the success story that we have with Mercury, and they're primed to follow Mercury's lead. And so CSAA is now talking to us in the same way that Mercury was. So I hope that'll lead to another success story, which again, we're working on a media release for both the Mercury success story that we have out in Inverness and our Wildfire Mitigation Award. Then you also saw our Marin Voice recently, and we have several other Marin Voices queued up surrounding Wildfire Preparedness Month and the work that we're doing. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments? Director McMillan.
I have a comment. Marin Master Gardeners recently learned that San Domenico has undergone a ton of Zone Zero work. And so another person from Fire Smart Landscaping and I went out there and visited, and she took a lot of pictures showing all their Zone Zero work that will be available. It's just a great resource to have.
They've been doing a lot of work over the last several years.
Yeah, and it's mainly insurance related, driven, but it's beautiful what they've done. So it's good to see.
Yes.
Yes. Director Goins.
Nothing related to what Mark just said, but 2 days ago, the Marin Biomass Project was released. It's a 300-page document that analyzes current flows of biomass being generated from forest health and green waste management in Marin, where the material currently goes, and with 5 suggested recommendations as to where they might go. The take home is that we're currently shipping we're 340,000 miles a year of diesel traffic, exporting our chips to Stockton and Anderson. And there's some recommendations that we develop some infrastructure here to process the chips in Marin to produce electricity with partnership with Marin Clean Energy, Marin Sanitary. Also, Novato Sanitary has some interest in siting a pyrolysis facility. This is stuff we can talk about, but Mark, it's time to agendize this.
Yes, we do note that. And as I mentioned at the board meeting let's wait for the June meeting though, so we can get through the work plan.
Yep. So thank you. I think you'll all be interested, and there are implications for what we do with our material. We currently don't specify anything in regards to where it goes, and we could specify if facilities develop, we could specify that rather than going to Stockton, perhaps they should go to Marin Sanitary.
Thank you. I have a comment as well. I want to go back to the award. I want you to know I was really proud to represent all of you there. We were different because most of the people there were individuals, city managers or mayors who accepted for their own specific jurisdictions, whatever they did within the jurisdiction. We were a 17-member organization. And that I think that was the reason that I got to go with Mark instead of Mark only. And we were called out as being unique. And this was all over the country. We also had someone from Hawaii receiving an award. So I accepted it on your behalf, on our behalf, with a great deal of pride. And also the recognition that Marin Wildfire has, as Mark said, just through the logo and the networking. So we did a good job and we got an award for it. So congratulations to all of us. That was my comment. Really great. Okay, are there any other, please, for the record, show that Director Kurtz is here. Thank you. So do you have any comments or questions about this? Okay, then moving on, we will ask members of the public if they have any comments.
It looks like we do have a comment in the virtual environment. Okay, Chief Tyler, you should be able to deliver your comment, sir.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we
Yes.
can.
Just regarding the CWPP, the executive summary, I know that all of comments have been captured and they're working on the final draft. With regards to Bruce's comment to the biomass, I did make a comment in the CWPP executive draft that perhaps could be a placeholder to reference the biomass report. Since the CWPP is a 5-year plan, I think it would be important to include something, maybe as an appendix C's or something, how the biomass project has come together, and it's referencing, chips and vegetation fuel reduction work and what's the best practice or what can we do to reduce that carbon footprint. And I do think it could live there. So I just am saying that as a note here that maybe could be followed, up. So it's timely right now to get included. That's the end of my comment. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any comments from the directors? Okay. Yeah,
And there are no additional hands at this time.
great. So bringing it back to the committee. Now I'll ask for any additional comments. Hearing none, we'll move to item 6, the consent calendar. The opportunity for public comment on the consent calendar items will occur prior to the committee's discussion of the consent calendar. The committee may approve the entire consent calendar in one action, or if one item may be removed by anyone for separate discussion. So I will now take comment on the consent calendar from the public. Are there any people present or online that wish to make a comment?
There are no hands at this time.
Okay, seeing none.
Move to consent?
Thank you. Moved by Director Rodoni, second by Director Kurtz. All in favor? Aye. Motion approved. Okay, moving on to item 7, committee reports. So the first one, item 7A, is the Operations Committee. A representative from the Operations Committee will present this item. I will now take questions. Oh, no, not yet. Has to present first. Mark, who will be that person?
That's me.
That would be-
So a representative from the Operations Committee will come to the full board meeting. And I think I'll hold off on too much of an update here since we're going to dive into the JPA-wide proposals and the work plan development update and another item.
Okay. All right, so I will now take questions about this item from the committee. None. Okay, I will now take public comment on this item. Are there any members of the public who wish to make a comment?
There are no hands at this time.
Okay, I'll now bring it back to the committee for discussion and feedback. No motion is required. Okay, seeing none, we move on to item 9, Board of Directors Agenda Review. I'm sorry, 8. Yes, 8, of course. Discussion items. This is the big part. Okay, A, the 2025 Work Plan JPA-wide proposal. Mark and Anne, will you present this item?
Yeah, absolutely. So just for a little context for those online, each year Marin Wildfire and its member agencies develop a work plan and budget for the next fiscal year, which starts on July 1. And this is a long process. We start meeting in December and we keep working through ideas and projects and proposals and draft budgets into April and early May, and then the board takes action in May. So many of these discussions happen in public meetings, such as the Operations Committee meetings. So we invite members of the public to come and jump in. Those agendas are online. So join us there. So this year we have had a lot of really great, robust discussions and more to come. The next Operations Committee meeting is on the 9th. This is that notorious and well-loved slide, again, with a couple of items highlighted. So check marks next to the items that are done. We started in December, have been working together for several months now, and have been proposing projects and programs, submitting them into an online portal, which then tracks those so that we can keep track of budgets and who's proposing what. And we've been sorting through all of those. Today is not only discussing the JPA-wide proposals, giving a preview here at the Executive Committee, but we're also meeting our ATC Advisory Technical Committee, which is a working group, a staff level working group, where we think through and propose projects and programs, and we kind of think through the nitty-gritty. So we'll be meeting this afternoon, and then again, Operations Committee on the 9th, and that's a public meeting where anybody can join. We usually meet a lot at this time of year, so a lot of work going on. So big thank you to all the member agencies who are engaged and putting in extra time and effort to really think this through with us. So on this calendar includes 2 presentations to the board, as Mark has mentioned and I've mentioned previously. It's just so much content, we needed twice the time to really dig in. So we'll be talking about projects, JPA-wide projects in April, and then the overall and zone projects in May. So looking forward to that. So each year, the Operations Committee, which is comprised of city managers and fire chiefs, discusses an overall strategy for the work plan. And usually this is pretty consistent from year to year. Sometimes things are added or subtracted. I want to just briefly run through what was decided this year. The house out approach, that's a really fundamental principle to what we do. So that will continue. Home hardening defensible space continues to be a very high priority, continue to reduce wildfire risk to communities, by providing resources directly to residents for home hardening and defensible space activities. Shaded fuel breaks is number 3. That continues to be a high priority. Prioritize shaded fuel breaks directly adjacent to communities and explore the potential for strategically placed landscape area treatments or splats informed by pathways modeling. And that's modeling that helps display how fire moves across a landscape and could potentially enter communities. Prescribed fire is also a priority. Expand the use of prescribed fire and public education and involvement around beneficial fire. Evacuations, continue to prioritize evacuation planning and projects to improve safe and efficient evacuations. Insurance continues to be a priority. Partner with insurance companies and the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, or IBHS, to help avoid insurance cancellations and control costs for homeowners. Public education, increase public education, particularly to new audiences. Support activities that fire agencies and Marin residents can take, such as home hardening and defensible space, particularly Zone 0, that first 5 feet, safe evacuations, and reducing human-caused ignitions. And there was a new item added this year, which is specific to ignition reductions. Reduction of ignition potentials through local projects and programs, including but not limited to enforcement. And so those are the 8 strategic guidance ideas that our city managers and fire chiefs put forth, and they were communicated to the ATC and the staff who are submitting projects and proposals. That's kind of our framework for moving forward, continuing that house-out approach and kind of a holistic systems approach, because no one strategy is going to solve it by itself. So last month in March, the board considered a 2.5% increase in revenue based on February to February CPI consumer price index increase. And we use that as the basis to think through and budget for the next fiscal year. So this board approved an increase of the tax levy. So that means we worked on our budget with a 2.5 CPI and calculated these numbers for total projected revenue for 26-27 at $23,551,370. And then the JPA language dictates that 60% goes to core, and 10% of that 60% goes to admin. And then you work some math, and you get to a budget of $6.9 million for core projects after deleting out the JPA-wide budget. And then each zone gets a certain percentage of that according to the dollars raised in each zone. And then according to the JPA language, D-Space gets 20% and local gets 20%. The reality is that D-Space and home hardening gets quite a bit more than 20%, as you'll see in future presentations on zone-specific and JPA-wide proposals. If you further dig into those numbers and look at allocations for each jurisdiction, this is how it breaks out. Local, again, 20%, D-Space, 20%. Those numbers are stable and don't really change based on discussions at this time of year around what JPA-wide proposals to include or not include, but the core dollars will change as the discussions kind of evolve through the season, and that happens every year. So currently, this is what each zone is allocated in terms of core funding. And again, that does change here and there based on this math here. So this table includes proposals past and present for the entire JPA coming out of that core bucket. So this also includes proposals that are not proposed for continued funding this year. So for example, we have a county-wide fire road inventory and assessment that received some funding in 24-25, but it's not proposed for additional funding here. But I listed it just to track what the JPA-wide proposals have been, just for kind of situational awareness, so to speak. So today we're going to take a moment and just give a very high-level overview of what the current JPA-wide proposals are, with the understanding that this is an evolving conversation. It's still happening with the working group, the advisory technical working group, and then also at the operations committee level. More discussions will happen on April 9th as well. So these are all draft. So Mark and I are going to just kind of go through these very briefly and give you an idea for what has been proposed. So we'll start off with Mark and operational budget.
Pretty self-explanatory when we get to the rent, tenant improvements, continued maintenance of our website, portal communications. The communications amount is less than we've done before in the past because we'll have some unspent from this current fiscal to bring over to next current fiscal. The training number is a little bit lower than it has been in the past for the same reason. And research and development, we've spent 0 of that for this fiscal. So but it's still good to have. So we'll roll over from this fiscal to next fiscal. This insurance is just recently updated. So this is the actual cost for our insurance. I still think it's a pretty good deal considering the work that we're doing. And so that brings us to 312,000. You see that it's a little bit, previous years was 312, excuse me. And you see that this year's is a little less, and that's because of unspent from this fiscal that we're going to carry over to next fiscal. I'm going to cover this one as well. This is a placeholder. Our Genesis and Ladris AI subscriptions are in our final year. We've actually paid that subscription already. It'll take us into halfway through next fiscal year. However, we wanted to leave something in there so when we renegotiate a contract with Genesis and or Ladris, maybe one, maybe both, or maybe neither, it's a good idea to have a placeholder in there to continue whatever subscription we have. So there are very few operational items that Marin Wildfire can fund. This is one of them. But since it's an operational item, I don't think Marin Wildfire really needs to be the driver of the decision-making of who or what subscription we use. It needs to be the operational people. It needs to be the police chiefs. It needs to be the fire chiefs that say, this is the product we want to meet our needs. So we are already engaged with the police chiefs and fire chiefs on this conversation on what they would like for halfway through next fiscal year. Then the Fireside Defensible Space Inspection Application Subscription. This is what drives our Defensible Space Evaluation Program. As you may remember, in year 2 of our organization, we decided to make this a JPA-wide proposal rather than each of the member agencies paying an individual subscription that they would fund out of the D-Space bucket. So it just made sense to include that. It also includes the dynamic risk analysis, which helps us prioritize work both on parcel with the resident, but also at a community scale. Did we add the grant subscription?
Mark, do you want questions as you go?
Pardon me? Yes.
Yeah.
Let me just finish one thing. It was recommended by the ATC. We had been putting the subscription for Fireside's grants application within the grants proposal. It was recommended by the ATC that why don't we just move it over into the overall Fireside subscription? So this dollar amount includes the grants module within Fireside as well. And ready for questions.
Just the only question I have is we have a different number on the draft budget than you do up there for Fireside.
That would be indicative of the move from originally the subscription for the grants module was included within the grants piece. And so is the number different by 15,000?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is then.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. We'll correct the table.
Great, thank you. We also work very closely with GIS contractors because we generate a lot of spatial data, and the spatial data is really key to all of the modeling, our metrics, the CWPP, et cetera. So we propose continuing our GIS program, and that includes continued management of a significant amount of spatial data and all of our data collection on our veg management projects, et cetera. Our GIS contractor receives that data and makes sure it is consistent from agency to agency and project to project, and then it gets inputted into our models, our risk reduction analysis. They also help coordinate with land management agencies to make sure we are working well with our land management partners and aware of all the areas and resources where we're working on their lands. Very involved in dashboard development and support, creation of maps, those beautiful maps that you see at various events. A lot of technical support, both for Marin Wildfire staff and member agency staff, including training. There was a training last week on GIS, how to use our tools that our GIS contractor did, and that is now available to all of our member agencies and partner agencies, whoever's interested in additional GIS knowledge. We'll have more of those coming. And we're also creating a data hub for sharing data and dashboards, metrics, et cetera. We're going to create a great one-stop shop for finding all of that information, because right now it's a little bit hard to find the dashboards online. So last year we proposed 100,000, this year a little bit less, and we'll see going forward. So that is our GIS program.
Is that Sonoma Technology?
No, that's Green Info Network. We had an RFP go out a couple of years ago, and we selected Green Info Network, a nonprofit, to do this work for us.
Okay, thank you. Very good, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll cover the grant program. We're maintaining the $900,000. One big change to talk about, though, is we haven't announced it in a public meeting yet, but the ATC has heard it. Josh Hampshire is one of our original employees, our first Grizzly Corps, one of our first Grizzly Corps members who's been with us from almost the beginning, is deciding to move on and continue his career in the medical field, which is basically where all of his family is. And it gave us an opportunity. First of all, it's hard to say goodbye to one of our OGs, but it also gave us an opportunity to reevaluate the grant program and how it's being managed. And while there are times where centralization creates synergies or creates efficiencies is the word I'm thinking. Thank you, Ann. Sometimes decentralization works better. And we're thinking, and this was Josh's recommendation, that perhaps if we decentralize the grants program a little bit, number one, we find that when the grant program is closer connected to the DSpace program, it's a better experience for the resident, and that we actually get better work performed. So we reached out to Santa Fe and Novato initially because that was the easiest, because they were their own DSpace and grant program. Both were wholeheartedly supportive of this maneuver. We're still working with the DSpace Alliance on how we can bring 14 member agencies together and manage the grant program in a decentralized fashion, where the DSpace program is much more connected to the grant program. Still working out those details, but the bottom line is we still are looking at 900,000 in funding. Last year, that included the 15,000 for the grant module for Fireside, but we moved that to the other budget space. It also included 85,000 for the grant specialists. This year, by decentralizing, it'll increase money that's going to the residents. Those numbers that you see are proposed, and it's the midpoint between, if we were to divide the zones by 5, it's 20%. And that's not necessarily the best way to divide the grant money, is by 5. But then if we went solely on a basis of the revenue for that zone, then West Marin ends up getting about 3 houses treated. So this was a formula that was worked out last year. It's the midpoint between 20% and your zone revenue. And it worked out pretty well last year. We aren't having a large number of residents not being able to receive grants based on availability and eligibility. So we think that number works pretty well. You'll see that for this year's proposal, we said including up to a half-time grant specialist. That is in case the DSA does not have the bandwidth within their employee pool, that we would have funding for a half-time grant specialist. Because if you think about Novato and Santa Fe, they equal about half the work. for the grants program. And so the DSA covers about the other half. And so that's why we landed on that half piece there. But it may end up that we don't need a grant specialist at all. It's still stuff I need to work out with the D-Space Alliance. But I really do, there's a lot of places where I think centralization of effort is going to help Marin Wildfire. But I think in this case, I think decentralization is going to help the resident.
Mark, do the individual zones get to take an administrative fee for running this program off the top, or how would that work?
It'll be, the way it's working out, it's the employees that are already funded by Marin Wildfire would be managing the program.
Okay. And then a more broader question, really comment on this item and the next item. I think we should be looking at our budgets a little different the next few years, because as we're going out for renewal, I think we should focus more on the things that the public see and the benefits to the public, and maybe putting more dollars towards those things. This program, for example, has never increased from when the last 4 years, any dollars to it. I know it's a popular program and it works well as the chipper program has only increased once or twice. Anyway, just to mention in this budget, to focus on things that are public facing and have more impacts on the ground, to think about putting more dollars in those accounts, individual items for the next few years, to really demonstrate to the voters that the money's being returned to them. And I know dollars are tight, but even 10% more could be a strong message in some of these categories.
And in response, and I saw Julie probably has supportive language, but I think that's going to be an advantage of this year's approach, where the board is going to be allowed an opportunity to weigh in on the JPA-wide proposals as we move forward, so that those types of comments and discussions can be brought to the ATC and ops so when we bring it to the board, there is more board input to some of those numbers.
Thank you. I would have the same comment. I agree with Director Radoni. I think I would like the opportunity. You're talking to ops and ATC, but I, as a board member, would like a chance to talk to my own agency about the change and see what concerns they might have and bring it back. I think this is, a necessary decision because of Josh leaving, but I think it's one that at least the executive committee and possibly the full board will want to weigh in on.
And Julie had her hand up.
And Julie.
Yeah, I would also like to echo what Director Radoni said in terms of making more funds available for residents. I think what you said was 85 and 15 are actually going to be available for grants.
Those numbers, the 188, 184, 170, 150, that's already adding the 85 and 15 to the dollars.
Okay.
Those are the numbers from, I'm sorry. Because this is so fluid, not all of the numbers are up to date. Those numbers actually do not reflect that modification. So apologies for that. We can work through that math and provide updated numbers.
So are you saying
But
those numbers would be a little higher?
Yes, they will. So in effect, the budget for the program goes up by reducing the dollars that are being spent on staff and the fire side.
Yeah. Okay. And I had a question about what the priorities would be for fiscal year 26, 27 on grant funds.
Great question. This year, we were really zeroed in on Zone Zero. Sorry for the pun. I really did not mean to do that. And home hardening items, and 3 home hardening items being vents, gutter guards, and non-wood connectors to the fence within 5 feet. That is likely to continued guidance. However, every zone's needs are different, and that's part of the decentralization, is for the zone to tailor their grant program to the needs of their resident. I'll look at West Marin as an example. Far fewer fences connecting to the structures than we have in residential neighborhoods like in Novato. So you have that. We also have historically included direct assistance as a portion of the grant program. Now that we have the Ember Ready program to support HOAs, Firewise communities, and such in a direct assistance direct assistance manner, zones could decide to use a larger portion of their grant funding towards the Ember Ready program to help create Zone Zero incentives throughout our different zones. Again, it'll be more decentralized with the zone having more control how those grant dollars are expressed in their communities.
To follow-up question and thinking about the zones, I think it's going to be pretty easy for San Rafael and Southern Marin and Novato to administer the grant funding, but I'm not sure how the central zone would manage that funding, given that it's 6 or 7 different jurisdictions.
And that's where connecting with the D-Space Alliance is going to be key, and perhaps our folks in Suite 270 with some additional support can work with each of the member agencies in the DSA to meet that goal. There's
So
still
more to
for,
be
for sure. There's more work to be done.
Okay, got it.
Okay, and Director Kurtz.
So thank you. Yes, San Rafael is very much on board with the decentralization process. But looking at it holistically, will we be able to see the data coming back centralized? So in terms of what is being the central, or whether it's the data, the reporting, the marketing nomenclature, all that will be
Standardized.
standardized.
The good news is that the data piece is super easy because it's all through the Fireside portal, and they just click on what zone they're working in. So it's all already automatically coalesced. And then it'll be incumbent upon all of the agencies working together to make sure the outreach language is the same.
Okay. Because right now, San Rafael has moved to using refund instead of grant. But we talk about grants, we talk about refund, we talk about direct assistance. And I don't know if we're differentiating within those three, or they're all considered to be the same.
Good question. I would say direct assistance is different, but refund and grant, that could be very similar.
Okay.
So definitely, as we work through this, we'll take those notes.
Great. Thank you.
And I have a question, and that is,
So does Bruce.
I'm sorry, who else?
Just one comment.
Bruce.
I'm in support of Dennis's recommendation, but I think it's important for everyone to realize that members have local funding, the 20% local funding. And Novato specifically has decided that all local funding will go to grants. So it's a substantial move of money. And so it's not, so in our storytelling, and I think in our marketing, it's important that we bring everything back in to state that, these are the specified numbers, but when members then, exercise their autonomy in making decisions, that they're moving money appropriate to their area, and we can report as an authority, we in fact are moving more money to the local and in a more meaningful way. So I just want to make sure that folks understand that and we capture it, Mark.
And I'll just add that there are several agencies putting a lot more time and effort into direct assistance and grants. So you'll see in the zone-specific proposals, local core dollars, as well as D-Space, and really all three of those buckets really going towards a lot of home hardening and defensible space work.
And what I'll add is, again, even if they are local dollars being used for the grants, they're core dollars used for the grants, it's still going through our Fireside grant application module. So it's the data and how much we're spending that is still captured in there, number one. Number two, when we gave you those pretty tables to say how much is going towards on-property work, the individual programs like Novato's 1.1 or so million of their local dollars are going towards grants. We include that in those numbers when we report out what's happening on property.
I just want to add that I think that the 60-20-20 is an illusion, and we're doing a good job of actually explaining where money actually goes. So it's and we'll work with that in our communication work, I'm sure, with our public information folks. So thank you.
Okay. I have a question, and that is logistics. Okay, Josh is gone. We're in some kind of cycle. So what's going to happen between the time that who is handling what's going on right
Josh is
now?
not fully gone. Josh is here to allow for the transition.
Oh, good. Okay, I saw this gap.
My apologies for not making that clear.
Oh, great. Okay, thank you so much. All right, that was a good answer. Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments?
We figured that one was going to be a healthy discussion.
Good. I'll now take comments from the public. Are there any members of the public? Oh, sorry. Continue. please.
We just figured it would be
I'm
good.
trying to hurry this meeting, and you know.
And we just figured it would be good to pause for dialogue.
Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Ember Ready program, no dollar amount to encumbrance for Marin Wildfire for the staffing. That is part of a Marin Community Foundation grant for this year and next year. This year being the current fiscal year and the fiscal year that we're planning for. The only Marin Wildfire fundings that may go towards the Ember Ready program would be in the form of direct assistance, and that would be through the grant program already we just discussed, and it would be up to the member agencies to work with our Ember Ready staff to identify the key locations where they would like that work. This map that you see here is just an overlay of the fire severity threat zones, along with what you see flashing up and down is our robust network of Firewise communities, and it's those Firewise communities that we're really working with closely for Ember Ready. And we're already, we keep talking about 90 Firewise communities. We're already above 90, and we have a couple more in queue coming up. So as the Firewise communities continue to grow, we feel that that's another really good way to exert our Ember Ready program into the, we should have put the, next time we'll make sure we put the new logo on there. Because we're getting better about saying Ember Ready and not the old name.
All right. So another great public-facing program, the Chipper Day program. No changes are proposed from last year or this current year. We'll still have 6 weeks, 6 rounds, 6-week-long rounds per zone, totaling 30 weeks for 5 zones of chipping. So that includes $1.4 million and 1 vegetation management specialist that is covered through that budget. So we're proposing the same budget for this current year. Anything you want to say there?
I would like to add, I completely understand Dennis's comment about this is one of the most popular public facing programs and that it hasn't grown as far as monetarily. In fact, we reduced it by 100,000 last year. But there is a however. With these 6 weeks per zone, totaling 30 weeks of chipping, yes, we have grown every year, but we haven't, that 1.4 million is assuming maxed subscription for each of the 6 weeks per zone. We haven't hit that max subscription. So at this time, I think we can still grow the number of people that are participating in the Chipper Day program without growing the number that it costs to run it.
Good.
Thank you.
Again, speak the obvious around the woody biomass utilization, the strategy and the recommendations. This is prime. This is a segment of our program that's prime for an opportunity to direct disposal to prospective facilities. And I'm just speaking the obvious. I'm sure you guys conclude that. You're way ahead of me.
Yeah, we totally agree, and we're hoping that that is an opportunity, especially to decrease costs, but especially if local facilities are able to expand in a way that can handle more material, that would be fantastic. And we're looking forward to more discussions on that. Great. Mark's going to cover public education.
Hold on to your seats. This is an interesting one and has had some very valuable and interesting conversations. Last year, there was a lot of concern expressed during the operations committee and during the board about the definition and the nature of our relationship with FireSafe Marin, stakeholder, partner, contractor, and a lot of concern of the professional services agreement not necessarily well describing that relationship and or well describing the nature of the work and exactly what we were asking for from FireSafe Marin. Based on that feedback, we asked Gene Bonander and Pam Kuhn to work through a series of interviews with that represented every zone, every member agency in one shape or form. Some people at the board level, some people at ops, some people at ATC, some people in the communications shop, well over 20 plus one-on-one or group type conversations, a very thorough document that worked through the strengths of our current system, the weaknesses of our current system and how we can improve it. Some of the ideas that came through the conversation was, first of all, we were able to work on the scope of work congruently as these conversations were going. So as we were getting updates from Pam and Jean, we were able to build that into the scope of work that we were working with between Charlotte Jourdain, myself, and Fire Safe Marin. Also came up with an idea of a communication strategy group that could be included in the development of all communication strategies. One of the concepts was that this would be a standing group similar to the ATC. There was resistance from all the participants, not all, but many of the participants in the group that, wait a minute, you're going to ask us for yet another committee to be on? And based on the communication strategy, it could be different people needed from the different member agencies. So the recommendation from the people that we were interviewing was, rather than make this a standing committee, make it an ad hoc group so that you can build the right group for the strategy. Let's say the strategy is surrounding defensible space. Well, then we would bring our defensible space experts and our communications experts together. And as opposed to a shaded fuel break, you might bring in a different group of people to develop a strategy to discuss our shaded fuel break than you would for defensible space. So that was one of the key takeaways. The other main takeaway, and I won't go into details for you, but I'd be happy to share it with you. The well defining the scope of work with Fire Safe Marin into these 4 programs, and then allow them to cost those 4 programs. That was one of the concerns, is not necessarily understanding where the funds were per effort at Fire Safe Marin. The way we designed the scope of work, you'll be able to see exactly what the level of effort, which is difficult because stuff that's going to happen in program 1 will actually support program 2 and vice versa, but we're doing our best to create those buckets so you can clearly understand. Then one of the other ideas was, this was an opportunity for Marin Wildfire to evaluate what we should outsource for our public outreach and public education and what perhaps we should have internal. And it started to go down the route where we were recommending that Marin Wildfire would bring on a communications coordinator. You saw that a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about strategy. It met resistance at the ATC level. Of the groups that were interviewed, about 50% of the people were supportive of it. When we met with the ops and the ops ad hoc subcommittee, again, there was resistance towards communications coordinator, and it was brought up by Chief Roman at San Rafael, and I completely agree with his stance. He goes, he looked me in the eye and said, Mark, Marin Wildfire should already be in the position to be doing this communications coordination. Why aren't you already doing that? And so my honest answer to that was, yes, I agree with you. Marin Wildfire should be in that communications coordination role. However, if you look at my staff, they're already overworked and don't necessarily have the exact skill set for communications coordination. So following, like I fall back to my history or to my past, I fall back on the incident command system. I'm the incident commander for Marin Wildfire. If I don't have someone to fill in that role, guess whose responsibility it is? So it's fallen on my shoulders for the communications coordination, and I have not fulfilled that obligation well enough. And so that's why we were proposing that we hire a communications coordinator. So Chief Roman said, well, why don't we include that into Fire Safe Marin's scope of work and have them be the communications coordinator? And that's how we had been trying to do it in the past. Some organizations were treating Fire Safe Marin with that in that regard. Some organizations were not. There were some missteps. Sometimes we would propose a communication strategy without making sure the right people in the member agency were informed of that strategy. And the first time they realized that that strategy was in effect was when they were driving down Sir Francis Drake Boulevard and they saw a Golden Gate Transit bus with the logo on it. Seriously, that's real world. That is how some of our member agencies found out about our communication strategy. And it wasn't that it wasn't necessarily communicated to that member agency. It was not communicated to the correct people in that member agency. So it hasn't been fully vetted by the operations committee yet, but the unanimous direction from the ad hoc subcommittee to the operations committee is to build a 5th program into Fire Safe Marin's scope of work, well documented with deliverables, that they would do our communications coordination for us, but we would also have to make sure that all of our member agencies will treat Fire Safe Marin as our communications coordinator. And I'm already starting to see some successes, to be honest with you. As we are building the communication strategy for the CWPP, I'm seeing a much better dialogue between our member agencies and Fire Safe Marin in developing that content. So I think we've turned the page. We analyzed things that had not gone well in the past. We've put those behind us and we're moving forward. So I'm already seeing some successes in that. So I'm waiting for the ops committee to officially say we want the communications coordinator responsibility to be in Fire Safe Marin. That's when I'll reconnect with Charlotte Jourdain and work with the firm deliverables. That would be Program 5 of public education, and then Fire Safe Marin would cost us all out. Those numbers that you see there were simply placeholders that staff and I came up with. 1 million for what we thought would be possible for programs 1 through 4, 200,000 for a communications coordinator if they were one of our employees. One advantage to having Fire Safe Marin be communications coordination, when we started drafting what the scope of position description would look like for the communications coordinator, I had Gene and Pam telling me I was looking for a unicorn. We were looking at so many varied talents that it would be hard to find the one person that does that. Fire Safe Marin has the team approach and would actually have the skill sets already embedded within their organization to provide that. We would just give a very clear scope of work and directions. Like when we part of one of the programs is 2 communications campaigns. Well, that campaign would be vetted. The topic of the campaign would be vetted by the member agencies before it started, and they would be part of the development rather than, hey, here's the campaign we developed. What do you think of it? So it's a long story. I'm sorry it took up a lot of time, but I think it was valuable to give you all the background and how we got to where we're at. And I'll just hit on the Ember Stomp items really quick and then have you guys fire away with your questions, comments. Ember Stomp, last year we funded it at 150,000. We were able to get 75,000 plus in donations and or vendor subscriptions. So if we put another 75 in it, we'll bring us back up to 150. Perhaps we get another round of donations like we have, but that's not a guarantee. One change, it'll still stay within the same fiscal year, but rather than having it in September, have it in May of 27 for a couple reasons. May lines up with Wildfire Preparedness Month. It makes sense. It sets people up at the beginning of the season. And we're starting to see a little staff fatigue, both at the Fire Safe Marin level and at the member agency level of putting on Ember Stomp every year. Maybe we go with an every year, 18-month model for Ember Stomp. September brings us the advantage that people are thinking wildfire more in September than they are in May. But so there's benefits for both, but so maybe the 18-month cycle is a little easier for the public and for staff. And I'll stop talking.
Now? Okay. Director Kurtz.
Thank you. This is a great update. And from a year ago where it was very, very contentious conversation, I really appreciate all the work that's been done to get to this point. Can you describe a little bit more about what Program 5 is? That just the communication coordinator?
That would be and so
I'll let you, I'll let you, it's, yeah.
yeah, I hear
No,
what you're saying.
Yeah.
It would be if we were to continue to call it Program 5, it would be communications coordinator. It would be communications coordination.
Okay. I'll let you guys.
But I hear what you're saying. Totally hear what you're saying.
Because I think that a lot of that coordination's already happening through the Fire Safe Marin structure.
Correct.
And then on Program 2, in terms of support residents, maybe just in terms of I know what you're talking about in terms of public education, but how that differentiates from the inspectors or anyone else who's doing Ember Ready or anything else in terms of support residents.
And that's, I'm glad you brought up that specific example, because where it is that when you receive your report, your fireside report, when you get to inspection, every single finding will be linked to a specific item within Fire Safe Marin's website. That's what that program is.
Okay.
And then connecting you with, perhaps it's a DIY video. You know, our success case in Inverness with Mercury, they literally use one of the 90-second videos.
Right. But so maybe the program too is the tie-in with the home inspection.
Correct.
And so maybe
We
in
can,
terms of,
when you see we could change that specific title. When you see the deliverables in the scope of work, it makes it really, really clear.
okay, great.
I can
Thank you.
Screen share the scope of work if you'd like, but.
That's
Yeah.
So are you thinking that the budget for Fire Safe Marin will be 1.2?
I would like to see that. Fire Safe Marin's not sure that that is achievable. So what I asked them to do is, if you go over what we are putting as placeholders, explain to us what we would not get if we stay with those placeholders.
And that's being worked out as part of the ops negotiation.
Yes,
Got it. So the board will see more real
they
numbers
won't be placeholders when it comes to the board in
in
May.
April, in May.
in May.
So, but in April, it'll still be like,
More than likely, it'll still be placeholders.
okay. You may want to say on that slide that it's still evolving.
You bet.
Mark, my only question is, and I support what you're proposing, I think it's a good solution, but I also want to recognize who at Marin Wildfire is responsible for overseeing all this work and making sure that they're being accountable to us. And I assume that's you, but
It
I
will
don't
be,
know.
and we'll
Okay.
make that clear.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Because actually, I mean, you bring up a great point. That has not been clear. I think, did you? Okay.
In looking at the Community Oversight Committee's meeting, one of the questions that came up is specifics about if we're giving $1 million to Fire Safe Marin, what specifically are we getting for it? So I think this idea of having a clear scope of work with deliverables will help answer that question as well.
I agree. And I think Rachel was ready to say something else, but you know, I look at when we went way back when, before Marin Wildfire was created, and the idea of the ops committee of making sure that we had city managers and fire chiefs together, fire chiefs bringing the fire subject matter expertise and the city managers bringing the public governance subject matter expertise. I think that collision, for lack of a better word, is helping us get to the point where we have a well-defined scope of work with Fire Safe Marin.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure, as we're talking about the budget of the 1.2, as that changes, the funds, it's a balance between public education and grants. Essentially, that's the trade-off we're making.
Or less money for each of the zones for on-ground projects.
Right.
That,
So
that's the tension that we have every year. And I don't mean tension in a bad word.
no, but I mean that it's all just a trade-off in priorities.
Yep.
And the question of if we fund one more than we fund the others, it's showing where our priority is. And so if we're putting more into public education because we need to have more into public education, so be it, and that makes sense. Or do we need to put more into home hardening and to grants?
And it's a zero-sum budget.
Right. So I think in terms of the dialogue and the discussion, I mean, everything is needed, but it's a finite set. And so how much more, I always question, how much more public education do we need to move the needle? Or do we need to do more in the other areas to move the needle? And we're doing more with Ember Ready, we're doing more with grants, we're doing more with home hardening, and we have to do more with that in terms of reaching our goals. And I think that always the conversation we have to have as a board is how much more in public education do we need to do to move? Will having 2 more Firewise communities make the difference? Or will tightening up the existing Firewise communities make the difference? I don't know those answers, and that's where, looking at the ops, looking at the ad hoc committee and others, but I think everyone needs to be really clear. If we say providing direct assistance, grants, refunds, however we want to call it, is really the priority, then our dollars need to reflect that.
I hear you. And we'll pass that along to ATC and Ops.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would just add that this is up until this year, we have not had specific metrics for public education. We haven't had them. And so, these are great questions and these are choices that have to be made. And I entrust members to make those decisions regarding where investments go. But the point here that's different from last year is that we have 4 specific metrics that we've approved. And the question is, how will the public education investments move those metrics for us? And we found that they're important, interaction with inspectors and et cetera, et cetera. But so I think, to me, that's the critical question, how our public education investments will move the needle on the metrics involved in public information education. We haven't had this discussion before, so it's brand new. So to me, that's the critical question. And yes, there's a choice between all kinds of things, and we're in our 6th year of 50 years, and we can't make a perfect decision. It only took 175 years to get here, and we're 6 years in it. But so I think we have to be patient, and I think we have to trust our ATC and ops and our leadership to do those negotiations and do that articulation and justify the balance we have present. So anyway, thanks. It's a complicated subject, but I want to commend Mark and team, and I've had conversations with my team about all this, and I want to commend you and Ann and all the work you've done. I think you've done a fantastic job. Thank you.
It was effort that was worth having for sure. And I really love your optimism of 50 more years.
Yeah.
Any more questions or comments?
And we have a few more proposals to go through.
Okay.
Yeah. And this is why we'll meet twice, April and May, to discuss at the board. So the next item has to do with the modeling, the dashboards, data, CWPP, etc. So there are a few things included in one proposal. One of those items, and this is all generally work done or coordinated by Willow Labs currently. And Willow Labs has been a huge partner in contractor doing our CWPP. So Willow Labs takes that data that Green Info Network collects and cleans up and inputs that into models, the dashboards, etc. We're able to quantify how much we're reducing risk across the landscape in terms of vegetation management. He updates that dashboard quarterly, and then he also does the on-parcel risk reduction modeling in terms of the goal 5 and that dashboard. So item number 1, which is around 41K, that includes continued updates to the metrics, dashboards, etc. for the next fiscal year. Then item number 2 includes ongoing as needed support. So, use it if you need it, meetings, coordination with all the member agencies, and with us on fire pathways analysis, how to use the different tools, digging into different projects, answering questions, meeting one-on-one, and so up to 20 hours per zone of meeting time. Presentations, he gets asked for a lot of presentations and different materials to help support kind of communication around this. Item number 3 then includes a near-term CWPP update. So what's the kind of to-do list that we weren't able to get to during this current iteration of the CWPP update? So that's at around 47,700 for this next fiscal year. So that includes some updates and incorporating data into the fire resilient roads work, the dynamic risk scores, CWPP related meetings and analysis, continued CWPP support. So for example, there's an online interface that needs to be maintained and kept up. And when there are things that aren't working, make sure to update it and fix things. And then there are other potential items, kind of wish list items that came up during the process, incorporating some ignition data as it becomes available, conflagration modeling if we decide to pursue that beyond what is currently proposed. So those are items related to CWPP. And then in addition to this conversation, the conversation about how often to update the CWP is coming up as well. And so there are options around that. We don't have to decide in this planning process when the next CWPP update takes place. But originally, when we distributed the RFP, the idea was to create a dynamic CWPP that is updated, regularly, more or less annually or something like that, in order to include, all of our vegetation management work, the on-parcel work that all the residents are doing to reduce risk. How do we keep that CWPP fresh as new data and new modeling becomes available? So then the idea will be, we'll have to decide at some point how often that happens. So every year, every other year, something else. And then the other item that I'm listing just at the bottom, so for the total of those three items for 26-27 is $144,700. And then another optional item that is not included in the budget as a whole right now is urban conflagration modeling. So we have been working with Xyloplan and Willow Labs on pilot communities and urban conflagration modeling to see how wildfire would enter into a community and spread given different amounts of home hardening and defensible space work, et cetera. And so that's a really interesting pilot program. The option is out there for if the operations committee and ATC would like to pursue that at the county scale, or different member agencies could pursue that individually as a JPA, as a zone-specific proposal. So we have cost breakdowns for both, depending on where the interest is. But currently, we have 10 pilot efforts that were funded through the Moore Foundation and Marin Community Foundation. So that's another item of discussion, that a lot of discussion at the ATC and Ops. Happy to pause here or move on to the next item. Please.
I just have a question on the urban conflagration modeling. What's the magnitude of cost for that?
So if we were to take the savings from the 10 communities that have already been covered and cover the entire county, that's about $227,000. And then there are annual costs associated with keeping that up to date, et cetera. And then if we go zone by zone, I think that ranged individually. I'd have to switch screens and grab the proposal. But the overall cost comes to something maybe 30,000 higher if you take it individually rather than as a whole. But happy to jump over to that screen share if you're interested in digging in. Okay. Yeah.
Also on the line of the urban conflagration. Thank you. Is that a possibility of doing some grants, getting some grants for that? Are there some available that might be able to support that work? I mean, we've used sort of off the cuff of not as much the science, but we know the history, as Director Goins has talked about, knowing the Novato and the fact that fire has gone through the valley and started north and gone through. But to have the data to actually back that would be invaluable. And I think it's super important, but I'm also wondering if there's some agencies out there that might be able to provide some grant support around it.
Mm-hmm.
We would definitely are open or will pursue grant opportunities,
Yeah. Okay.
but you know how that's been.
Right. Okay.
One thing I've been talking about with our member agencies, and I've had the conversation with Xyloplan, they understand that, is the amount of data that we receive from the 10 pilot communities may take us a good year or two to chew through that data. And it may be best to kind of pause on any additional Xyloplan evaluations. Let us work through the 10 pilot communities we have, see how we like it before we jump into a further subscription with them.
Great. And I'm just sharing the breakdown zone by zone if we were to go that route. Go ahead.
So let's see, how can I say this? We have a strategic plan and we have 5 goals, and we made a commitment to monitoring our progress according to the metrics that we established for those 5 goals. Now, the county took responsibility for the CWPP previously, now MWPA, which it seems appropriate to me that we have taken that lead. And, I think it is indeed appropriate. But I get lost when we talk about monitoring let me see, the bottom line is, I believe that monitoring our progress under our strategic plan goals and objectives should align with the CWPP, that we shouldn't be talking about different monitoring of, and that's what concerns me. Spending money on monitoring progress under the CWPP, I feel like we're missing the point that we're one here, and I think it's a poor articulation of, and perhaps an abandonment of our responsibilities as a joint powers authority to speak of them as separate. So Mark, this is kind of a philosophical, programmatic, kind of a growth thing for us as an authority, but you get my point. Spending money on CWPP monitoring, hold on a second, we're an authority, we oversaw it. So I think we need to look at our language and our approach and make perhaps a different articulation.
Let me clarify for you, because I think I'm going to satisfy your concerns.
I'm sorry?
See, let me clarify for you.
Thank you.
So, and I think I'll satisfy your concerns. The metrics dashboard update, ongoing as needed support, and our subscription that we have, our agreement with Green Info Network, continues to update all of our dashboards and continues to monitor all of our metrics. The update for the CWPP would be taking that data that we are already updating and reprioritizing the evacuation zones. The CWPP is providing us with prioritizations by evacuation zone, by topic, whether it's evacuation, whether it's alerts and notifications, on property, near property, open space. So the update that we're talking about would be taking our ongoing updates that is in alignment with and reshuffling those prioritizations for the evacuation zones. So we already are no matter, with those top 2 items, we're already covering our ongoing commitments.
And also,
Thank you. And I know it's a little, it's a bit confounding, confusing. It's a lot of moving parts, but thanks for the response and awareness and articulation. Thank you.
and I'll just note that the different dashboards treat one thing at a time, vegetation management separately, home hardening and defensible space work separately, and the CWPP brings that all together in one.
I just want to add on, so I've heard, I think what I heard from Director Goins was also the CWPP was previously funded through the county. And it's maybe outside of MWPA's scope around the continuation of the CWPP, and maybe there's an opportunity that the county's covering. All of it comes together. Is that, I don't know if that's.
Well, the county actually never funded the CWP. It was always funded by grants.
Okay. So there are grants.
We applied for 2.
Okay.
and
Yeah.
we applied for 2 and we struck out. We're 0 for 2 on those.
Other questions or comments? We can continue.
We'll continue. So the next item is related to the environmental compliance program. Previously, we were able to draw down on rollover dollars year over year, and we have used those. And so now we need to ramp back up this budget item. So you'll see a large increase from last year to this year, and that is because we are spending those dollars on all those great projects and need to ramp back up so that we're supporting not only new projects, but continuing implementation of already approved projects. So this proposal includes 1 exempt project per zone. So anything that uses a CEQA exemption, doing all the additional analysis that we always do for all of those core projects. And then in addition, we have over 40 exempt projects that are already approved and being implemented out on the landscape. And it's really important to maintain that support for all of those projects. So that includes botanical surveys, bird surveys, crew trainings, mapping and GIS and data collection, monitoring, reporting, right to enter agreements, extensive right to enter agreements, Caltrans and encroachment permits with the county, et cetera, et cetera. So it also includes tasks that are broad and apply to the entire environmental compliance program, like coordination meetings with regulatory agencies, meeting coordination, and regular meetings with the tribe, with our consultants, et cetera. It also includes some grazing monitoring. So San Rafael and Novato came to us with some ideas, wanting to bring in a great contractor to look at grazing practices, and they're great experts in this field. And so this also includes some dollars to do some residual dry matter and other monitoring within grazing projects around the JPA. So I'll leave it there. Happy to answer any questions or move on to the next item.
In terms of does the direction come from MWPA as to when they should be attending? I know that they provide a detailed report when they're in terms of our charging us. Do we direct them as to which meetings and things to be attending?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know my background, I was in environmental compliance for about 18 years before coming over to Marin Wildfire. So I'm able to direct the consultants and make sure we're being efficient. And we've been able to cut over time the number of meetings or the number of Panorama staff who attend meetings. So reducing from 2 to 1 in many instances. Also with crew trainings, that can be pretty pricey. And so we have been able to modify that process. So a lot of those crew trainings are done by staff, member agency or Marin Wildfire staff. And then, we have these great trifolds for different projects to highlight, sensitive resources. And we're able to kind of generalize those per area rather than per project. So we're not generating so many things like that to really make things more efficient and not be spending dollars that we don't need to.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, I know, not that we don't love all of our attorneys, but we tend to have, anytime we have an attorney in the room, it's have them go first, right? Because we know that it's on a billable basis. So appreciate that.
Yes, and that just brings up, this whole environmental compliance program was developed with our CEQA attorney in the room so that we could really kind of do that cost, benefit risk analysis and think through what do we need to do, what do we want to do, what is
Right.
moving, things a little too far in that direction, where do we want, where are we comfortable with some risk, et cetera. So
Perfect.
been
Thank
part
you.
of the process.
Just in terms of telling the story, when I look at the, fiscal year 25, 26, 217, and then this year 535, and I understand where we have to replenish the funds because a lot of it has been rolled over, but I'm wondering if there's a different way or a better way to tell the story, because what I think of is we've done these huge projects. The bulk of our work, the big environmental work has been done. Now we're kind of more on a maintenance basis. And so the cost should be going down, except for new projects. So I think we need to think about how we tell that story for that line item, because when the public sees that, they're going to think, what the heck is going on?
Yeah, that's a great comment. Thank you. I can do a better cost breakdown and also cost breakdown of where the how the dollars have been spent to date and in previous years, kind of those buckets of
I think that would be really helpful. Yeah,
great.
put it in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah. Generally, we've been spending around $400,000 a year through this fund. And then the different zones that use the most dollars, it really bounces around from zone to zone. So sometimes it's San Rafael, sometimes it's West Marin. This year it's been West Marin, but it really varies a lot. Okay, great. So speaking of vegetation management, this slide includes a budget for 2 positions with a slight increase of a couple percentage points over last year. That's 2 vegetation management specialists, and they help with contracting, GIS activities, data collection and monitoring, project planning and environmental compliance, permitting, management of field crews, coordination of consultant surveys, right to enter agreements, knocking on doors, asking for folks to sign on the line to allow us to do shaded fuel breaks, public communication, etc. So not a big jump over last year, just a couple of percentage points. And then just to note, MWPA staff out of the JPA wide budget includes 2 VMS here, 1 VMS through the Chipper program, and potentially up to a half grant specialist. So that's about 7% of the JPA wide budget, or somewhere around 420,000. In the coastal zone, as you know, we do have an emergency proclamation from the governor's office, and we are using that. So we have been able to coordinate with all the state agencies to get environmental compliance that expires. So we're hoping that there will be some sort of extension at some point, but there's no guarantee to that. So as long as we have that exemption, we'd like to continue doing work in the coastal zone. So you'll see an item here to help with West Marin and those coastal agencies do some of this work. Go ahead.
And if I could address a specific question that Bruce had when we were talking about the 200,000, why in the JPA wide budget? 2 reasons. It's in the southern zone, and the West Marin zone is not just in one zone. Second reason is this is a way to flex some more resources over to the areas that have been receiving less funding. So that's how we landed on JPA wide. Get why, but there was reasons behind it. And as a reminder, last year we made a decision to decrease our strategic reserve by 900,000. So we put 300,000 additional towards West Marin and Southern Marin as part of this coastal marine fuel reduction projects for a total of 500,000. And that we will use that entire 500,000. And since we still have 600,000 of that strategic reserve that we can decrease, it'll be staff's recommendation again to use another 300,000 towards these coastal marine fuel reduction projects while we have this exemption in place.
Good.
Thank you. Last one. So this item was proposed actually by Marin County Fire. And this is a way of engaging the fire foundry crews at a discounted rate. So this proposal includes 56 days of work across all the different zones. And normally that would be about $7,000 a day. The discounted rate would be $4,500 a day. They do have a grant to help with this cost, and so that's why we're getting this reduced rate. And so that includes a breakdown approximately between 8 and 14 days per zone. So 8 days in West Marin and 14 in Nevada and Santa Fe, and 10 in Central and Southern Marin. And so the idea here is to work with the Fire Foundry and commit some of their time and engage and have them help us reduce fuel loading on the landscape. Any questions on that one?
When Fire Foundry is out, which is fantastic, I mean, it was such a great program. Do they have anything that says MWPA? Or would they? Or could they?
Depends on the project they're working on, but with this, we could definitely include a magnetic sign on their vehicles for every time that they're working on this specific project, for
I
sure.
think that's part of the
I love
visual
that.
piece that we need to keep
Yeah.
going.
We have them already.
Right, exactly.
Right.
This is what I drew when they were talking about it, though, the Fire Foundry easy button.
Great.
Not that I'm a great artist. So we're open for questions, but we just burned through an hour and a half of our meeting with 5 exec committee members. So we will strongly encourage all of the board to watch these deliberations so that they can come into the board meeting in 2 weeks well informed of all the questions that you guys have asked, the conversations that have been going. And my little test to the board members will be, Artemis 2 is just getting ready to do its burn to go to leave Earth's orbit and go to the moon, but we don't know for sure if they're going to be delay it or postpone it. So at the board meeting, I'll expect an answer from board members to tell me whether or not that burn was successful.
Great.
And just
Okay.
one quick question on a previous slide. You had showing an allocation to Mill Valley. And I was wondering, my thoughts were that that was Southern Marin now, but it was your previous presentation.
You're talking about the local
Yeah.
dollars. So if you remember when Southern Marin annexed Mill Valley, the legal opinion was to continue to treat Mill Valley as a member agency
Okay.
until the tax is renewed or expires. So we continue to issue checks to Mill Valley, and then Mill Valley works with Southern Marin to expend those dollars.
I didn't understand it with the dollars too. I
That's
knew
how we
was
do
the
it.
Governance, so thanks.
I have one other comment or question around, it was one of the very first slides, if not the first slide. You have the term house out and then also home hardening and D-space. And I was wondering if we need to differentiate again, if there is a differentiation on those two. I can't remember if it was the first slide or second slide.
Are you referring to the strategic guidance from the operations committee?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, do you want to take a look and we can always consider at the operations committee level?
Do you see the distinction?
I do, but the premise of the house out is that includes our system approach, starting at the house, working out. So it does include home hardening, dispensable space, but it also includes shaded fuel breaks and strategically placed local area treatments, prioritizing closer to the home and then working out from there.
But we have shaded field breaks. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
going to put it out there that I'm just want to make sure that as we're using that as the guidance, that there's a clear understanding what we're talking about there.
Maybe we can clean up the language saying house with that prioritizing home hardening D-space
Under,
closer to the home, closer to the built environment and working out from there.
perfect. Thank you.
And the need for a systems approach that
Yes.
no one strategy is the silver bullet.
Director McMillan.
I had a question on this slide also. I recall, maybe I misheard, but I recall when you said that these were the priorities that the ops committee identified. I didn't hear you say that these priorities were based on science.
Mm.
And I think it's really important to emphasize that this isn't just, fire chiefs and city managers getting together and having a wish list.
Mhm.
The fundamental priority is using science.
Mhm.
And so maybe we could have a little tagline or something.
Yeah, that's a great point. And that's language we can add, and I can talk to the operations committee about maybe modifying these, but certainly that is the case. Science is definitely referenced in here, but we could make that stronger. Both in the way we talk about it and frame it, and also within the language itself.
I think it, justifies the approach, and it also justifies why we've spent so much money on all these studies.
What I think we can do is just anchor right back to our mission statement. Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority leads the development of fire adapted communities using sound, scientific, financial, programmatic, ... So at the beginning of this, based on our mission statement, this is our strategy.
That's perfect.
And this is
Thank you.
the best blend of the multiple mitigation practices you can practice at this time. I think that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to put out fires where they need to be put out with whatever tool is most appropriate at this time. The balance of our program of work is a product of very thoughtful methodological thinking as far as where are risks, what do we have to do. And we have a lot, and we can't deal with them all. We have to take them all kind of concurrently.
But-
Anyway,
But we're relying on science and data, not on emotion, which is very important.
Right.
That's a major point. We always make
That's
it.
critical.
That is, we're science-based. We tell people what we're going to do, and then we do it, and then we show what we've done.
Mhm. And we've got a lot of peer-reviewed literature on our science and research webpage for anyone interested in checking that out.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for a wonderful report. I'm really thorough, and thank you very much for this excellent work.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Hey, are there any other comments before I ask for public? Seeing none, are there any members of the public present or online that have comments about this item?
And if there are any members of the public who would like to speak or deliver a comment regarding the work plan proposals for the 2025-26 year, please raise your hand in the reactions. And there are no hands for comment at this time.
Hearing no public comments, then no motion is required for this. If anyone would like to make a last statement, this is your opportunity. Okay, hearing none, we will move then to item 9. Committee members' request regarding future agenda item. No, we will not. Sorry, Board of Directors agenda review. So Mark, will you present this item?
You bet. It's pretty self-explanatory. And again, with the recommendation that board members watch these proceedings to help speed up the board meeting. President Hillier and I did discuss including our fiscal year 23-24 audit from Badawi and Associates, which we've received and which is clean. But based on the length of today's meeting and the fact that it was a clean audit, we recommend holding the audit until the June meeting after we pass this current fiscal year's planning process.
Thank you. So ordered. That's what we're going to do then. Thank you so much. Any other comments? Okay. No.
And public comment for the few people online.
Okay. So we'll now take public comment on the draft agenda.
There are no hands at this time.
Okay. So seeing no public comment, I'll now bring it back to us, and no motion is required for this. So we'll move on to item 9, committee members' request regarding future agenda items. Are there any requests? I think we've kind of gone through what we want to do for future agenda items. So unless there are anything additional, is there anything additional?
Just a note for the biomass.
Yeah, official request that we
Look for
do
June.
agendize the biomass project for summary presentation to the executive committee.
Do you have one?
I was just going to ask you, where can we access that report? Where can we access the Marin biomass report that just came out a couple days ago? Where can we access it?
I'll send a link.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mike.
We were very careful in our initial distribution of the report to make sure that we sent it to those people, the thought leaders, the managers, to make decisions regarding how they might best, not clutter folks' lives, but strategically distribute to those who are going to be involved in making the decisions. So Mark sending it out at your discretion, that would be great.
You bet.
Thank you.
Great. All right. So are there any other comments in general about regarding future agenda items? Hearing none, we will now move to item 10, which is a closed session. I will now take public comment on the closed session items listed on the agenda. Is there any public comment? I'm calling the meeting back to order from the closed session. We're returning to open session. The committee held a closed session on the 2 items on the agenda and did not take any reportable action on either of those items. We'll now move to item 11, adjournment. We are now adjourned unless there's any objection to that. Thank you.